we're going to make apple cinnamon oatmeal. So this recipe, it's one of my favorite recipes, and when I first went raw, it really helped me get through the winter because I live here in Canada and it gets very cold in the winters, and you're detoxing in your first year and you're shedding a lot of weight, and sometimes you feel colder than normal the first year. So this really, it's a very warming food, and it's also filling. I rarely eat grains. Once in a while I will eat oat groats. This is, and this recipe is one that really helped get me through. It kind of is filling for those cold days and gives you energy, and it really worked for me. And often I would go and work out shortly after I had this, so it just gave me energy and had something that would really stay with me for a long time. So in this recipe, what it calls for is a cup of oat groats, 4 apples, and just however much you like of these, of the almonds, walnuts, raisins, and goji berries. Sometimes I just throw a few handful of whatever I have in with it and chop it up. I will show you after. 1 to 2 tablespoons of maple syrup or agave. If you're pure raw, use agave, and if you're like me, sometimes I add a little bit of maple syrup, and a teaspoon of cinnamon. And that's all there is to it. Another thing is, for this recipe, it's nice when it sits for a while. So often what I would do is make it the night before and just leave it sitting on the counter with something covering it. And then I'd get up in the morning and I would have oatmeal all ready for me when I first woke up. And if it's more than just a few hours, 7 or 8 hours overnight, then you can put it in the fridge. And if you feel better, it'll still kind of soften a bit in the fridge. But it softens more sitting on the counter. So if you know you're going to eat it the next morning, you can do it the night before and just leave it out. And that's what I usually did. So first thing is cutting and peeling the apples. These apples are quite small, so instead of 4, I'm going to use 5. So what we're going to do is put a cup of oat groats in the bowl. We're going to place our apples in the food processor. We're going to process them quite well. If you don't have a food processor and you have a juicer, a twin gear or a single auger, you can put them through your juicer with the blank plate so that it mushes them all up, and use the juice and the pulp that comes out to put in with your oat groats. And the juice and apple mush that comes through is what's going to soften the oat groats overnight, so in the morning it's going to seem like oatmeal. So we want them processed a lot. Down the sides with the spatula. Chunks of apple would be fine in here too if you didn't want to just leave some chunks in there. It's a nice texture. The more you process it, the more watery it's going to get, and that's what you want, is a real watery consistency, because the oat groats are going to suck it up, and that's what's going to give the oat groats their moisture. Okay, that's enough. Now we're going to put our applesauce mixture in with our oat groats. I didn't have a food processor, I just had a juicer, so I was doing it that way more often. And I would then chop up the walnuts and almonds that went in with it. I'm just going to stir this in. But now, since I have the food processor out, I think I might just throw the almonds and walnuts in and process them quickly. Either way is good. It's pretty easy to chop them up a little bit on the cutting board with a knife. But it's even easier to throw them in the food processor. So I'm going to add the walnuts and almonds in. You could have added a little bit of raisins or goji berries in too. I was debating that just to sweeten it up, but I'm feeling like having some texture in there in the beginning. But there's lots of variations, so either way you do it, it's going to be delicious. So I'm going to put goji berries in. They're very dried and hard now, but by morning they're going to be soft and plump. And same as the raisins. I'm going to add a teaspoon of cinnamon. And 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. And the recipe calls for 1 to 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. Of course, I'm making it extra sweet because I like to do that. If you want it less sweet, you could easily have put the raisins or half the raisins in with the almonds and walnuts, and that would really sweeten things up and just totally omit the maple syrup. But I love it, so I'm almost all raw except for a little bit in the condiment section. Maple syrup I have a bit of a weakness for. There. Now this will be excellent to eat even 3 or 4 hours later. It's edible now. It's edible in an hour or 2, but it's really better after it softens up. And it's amazing if you come back in the morning. If you do it right before you go to bed, just whip everything up. Rinse out the processor so it's clean in the morning, and just give it a quick wash, and then you have your bowl of oatmeal ready for you. First thing in the morning, it's a great breakfast, and once you get used to it, it's really, really easy to do. So enjoy it.